My daughter told me she didn't need me at her wedding, so I gave her inheritance to someone else. Before we go on, tell us, where are you watching from? Follow our channel so you won't miss the next story. Tales of love, redemption, and second chances. You know the strangest thing about getting old? It's not the knees or the back or the way the mirror tells on you. It's the echoes. Things you thought you said once, softly, tenderly, come back to you years later like thunder. "Daddy, I don't want you to feel obligated," Emily said, smoothing the sleeve of her ivory blazer like she was ironing the truth. "We've already got everything covered. You don't have to be involved." She said it in a bakery that charged $8 for a croissant and called it rustic. The windows faced Meeting Street in Charleston, where the old oaks hold their breath and even the humidity has manners. My hands smelled like lemon oil and pine from the frames I'd been restoring that morning. Beside Emily, her fiancé, Andrew Sterling, wore a pale blue shirt that probably cost more than my tool bench. He nodded at the words like a classical musician keeping time to a song I didn't know. "Not involved," I repeated as gently as I could. The words scraped on the way out. Emily looked past me at a display of tiny wedding cakes lined up like delicate promises. "Andrew's mother has a planner. The Sterlings have, well, systems, traditions. It'll be easier if we keep things elegant." "What would be easier, darling?" I asked. "An old carpenter father who knocks around and cries when he gives a toast." Andrew's smile was polite, the way museum guards are polite. "Mr. Reed, the ceremony will be very curated. It's black tie, live quartet, seated supper. The planner is concerned about variance." Variance. I remembered a time when fancy boys just said no. Emily tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the same ear I kissed on the morning of her first day of school while she clutched a lunchbox with daisies on it. "I mean it kindly, Dad. We don't need you to walk me down the aisle. I'm an adult woman. I'm walking myself. A father's job is to read what's not said, to hear the shadow at the end of a sentence." What she meant was, Andrew's people don't need what I bring. Sweat-earned manners, stories with splinters in them, a suit that still smells like cedar. "What about the rehearsal dinner?" I tried. "The old church hall's still got that mural your mother loved. I could make shrimp and grits the way—" "Mr. Reed," Andrew said, and for a moment I saw the boy without the polish, his jaw tight with impatience. "We've booked the Palmetto room for both nights. The chef is James Beard nominated, and the speeches are limited." "Limited," I repeated. "Don't make this harder," Emily whispered, eyes shining with stress I didn't put there, couldn't remove. "Please, it's just cleaner if you attend as a guest. No walking, no toast, no father-daughter dance. Just be happy for me." I smiled because I have lived long enough to know a smile is armor. "Well, that's tidy then," I said, picking up my cap. "And who am I seated with? The florists or the vendors?" "Dad," she said. The espresso machine hissed like a rattler. Outside, a horse-drawn carriage clopped past, tourists fanning themselves with brochures. In the glass, I caught my reflection. 64. Hands like maps, shoulders that still remember carrying her on the beach when the tide snatched at her ankles and she squealed, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" "Tell me one thing, Em," I said, very soft. "Is this what you want, or what they need?" She met my eyes for exactly one heartbeat, then looked away. "It's best." In best, some words are daggers with lace handles. I left money for her croissant and my coffee. "You'll always have my blessing," I said at the door, "even when you don't want my footsteps." On the sidewalk, Charleston smelled like salt and magnolia and old money, especially the kind that doesn't say its own name out loud. My truck sat at the curb like a loyal dog. I rested my forehead on the hot steering wheel and let the world settle. Imagine waking up and realizing the home you built inside your child's heart has been redecorated while you were out buying nails. That's how it felt. I called no one, not even Pastor Ray, who'd baptized Emily in water the color of sweet tea. Not even my sister June, who would have told me to go raise Cain at the Sterling estate. I drove to the shop instead, the one with Reed and Daughter frames still painted on the window in gold leaf. I never took the and Daughter down after Lily died. Maybe I kept it up for the ghost of a future I wanted too hard. Back in the workshop, sunlight made a chandelier out of the dust motes. I opened the old blue ledger with its brittle corners. On the first page was a name written in my late wife's looping hand. For Emily, college, wedding, first home, rainy days. Beneath it, the sums, years of scrimping, side jobs, broken knuckles and small yeses. We started it the spring Emily knocked her tooth out on the porch swing, and I sold my only vintage plane to pay the dentist. The ledger smelled like turpentine and hope. I ran my finger down the columns. The number at the bottom could buy a car outright, or a year of fancy rent. It could buy forgiveness, if forgiveness was something you could purchase, like satin chairs. I closed the ledger and slid it back in the drawer, the way a man lays a child down to sleep. "Been a minute since you looked at that book," said a voice at the door. I didn't have to turn. Only one person talks like she's half laughing, half scolding you back to life. Rosa Alvarez, 27, single mum. My Saturday helper who became my Tuesday through Saturday rock when her own father died, and grief introduced us like cousins who should have always known each other. She leaned on the doorframe, hair wrapped in a printed scarf, cheeks flushed from the heat. "You missed lunch, Mr. Tom. That means something happened. Rosa calls me Mr. Tom, even though I've told her 100 times to drop the Mr. When folks have had to fight for every ounce of respect, they hardly ever stop handing it out." "Coffee with M," I said. "Ah." She stepped inside, quiet as evening rain. "You want a hug or the truth?" "Truth," I said. "But I'll take the hug first." She squeezed me like she meant it. Then she stood back and read my face like a contractor reads a permit. "They froze you out, didn't they?" I nodded. Rosa clicked her tongue, a sound full of mercy and spark. "People who think money is a personality type always forget where love sits. Right here," she tapped my chest, "and right there." She pointed at the ledger drawer. "But they only see one of those pockets." "Rosa," I said, swallowing around a stone, "what do you do when your own child mistakes your hands for a stain?" "You keep the hands," she said. "Change where you put them." That night June called because the world leaks news through 100 cracks. She said, "You're invited as a guest." My sister's voice could peel paint when she wanted it to. "A guest at your own child's wedding. Thomas Reed, I swear I will march up that old plantation road and—" "No marching," I said. "I'll be there in my best suit. I'll smile for pictures, and then I'll come home and make a sandwich." June went quiet a beat. "You're cooking dignity again." "Best recipe I know." "Then listen to your stubborn older sister's command," she said. "Do not under any circumstances touch the ledger. Don't soothe this with money. Let folks feel the temperature of their choices." "I hear you," I said. I did hear her. I also heard the echo of Lily's voice, the way she'd whisper softer when she meant something more. "Tom, love our girl so steady she can't miss it, even when she turns her head." I slept badly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw a white aisle and a chair with my name on it, empty. By morning I had the kind of clarity that only lands after the storm throws its last punch. I brewed strong coffee and opened the shop before the sun made up its mind. Then I pulled the ledger out again and laid it on the workbench. I didn't add. I subtracted. Days, not dollars. I crossed out Christmases I'd spent alone when Emily chose Aspen with friends over my gumbo. I crossed out birthdays where I mailed cards because a dinner with the Sterlings had run late. I crossed out Sundays when the church pew was wide enough to seat my disappointment and nothing else. "Justice must be restored and arrogance punished," the echo said. "No!" I answered it out loud, surprising myself. "Not punished, corrected." That's when the bell over the door tinkled, and two women walked in carrying a gold frame like a wounded animal. One of them I recognized from years back, Mrs. Camellia Mercer, who once told me my shop was charmingly stubborn. The other was a girl in a thrift store dress and clean sneakers, holding the heavy end, jaw set with that particular determination I have only seen on people who've had to keep choosing hope because the alternative is a kind of death. "Mr. Reed?" the girl asked, setting the frame down carefully. "Mrs. Mercer says you're the only man who can make this right." Mrs. Mercer patted her arm. "This is Tessa. She helps at the shelter I fund on Rutledge. I'm sponsoring their summer art show, and her piece, well, the frame gave up the ghost. The corner was blown, gilding chipped, the backing warped, the kind of job you do only if you're willing to go slow enough to hear what the wood is asking." "Let me guess," I said. "Your show is tomorrow." "Tonight," Tessa said, flushing. "If it can't be done, I'll hang it unframed and stand there grinning like it's a choice." Rosa came out from the back with a pencil behind her ear. "We can do it," she said, not even blinking. "Mr. Tom can fix the world if you give him till supper time." "Rosa," I said, but she just winked at me. Tessa's smile had a crack in it where fear still lived. "I don't have much to pay. Mrs. Mercer already covered the materials, but your time—" She fished in her tote and pulled out a ziplock of scrunched bills like the world's saddest bouquet. "Put that away," I said gently. "You'll pay me by filling that room with so much light that folks forget the exit signs. Deal?" Her eyes watered and she nodded. People like her, like me, never forget the day someone decided we were worth more than the arithmetic. When they left, the shop felt like a chapel. I pulled the corner joint apart with the kind of mercy that's harder than force, stripped the old leaf, sanded the wound. Rosa mixed bowl clay till it gleamed like heart's blood. "You're humming," she said. "I am," I answered. "Feels like my hands remember their purpose." She glanced at the ledger, open and honest. "You deciding something?" "I am," I said again. "Then let me give you the Rosa rule," she said, wagging her pencil. "Never make a big decision hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. I'm 3 out of 4. Then I'm making you a sandwich. After, you can decide." At noon, I drove to the shelter on Rutledge to borrow a spare hanging wire and see Tessa's piece in better light. The building smelled like stew and clean pine. A little girl with hair in beads ran past me trailing clouds of laughter, chased by a teenage boy with a broom held like a sword. And at the far end of the hallway, an older woman ladled soup with the dignity of a queen. "Mr. Tom," she said when she saw me, "you the frame man. Bless you. That girl's worked 3 jobs and painted through the night. Said when people walk past that picture, they'll feel how a morning can forgive a bad yesterday." Her words landed like a warm coat on cold shoulders. On the way out, I passed a bulletin board with a flyer for Second Chances Scholarship. Handwritten at the bottom, in Tessa's careful print, "Apply even if you're scared." I went back to the shop and finished the frame. It came out truer than the original. Gold mellowed to the color of memory, corners tight as vows. When Tessa returned at 5, she touched the scrollwork like it might bite. "How much do I owe?" she whispered. "You already paid," I said. "How?" "You reminded an old fool what love looks like when it's busy." That evening, I stood at the back of the shelter's hall as folks circled the paintings like new planets. Tessa's piece, sunrise over the marsh, all greens and honey and stubborn light, stopped traffic. People put their hands over their hearts without knowing they were doing it. Camellia Mercer squeezed my elbow. "You put a crown on that painting, Mr. Reed." "Just gave it shoes that fit," I said. On my way home, I drove past the Sterling estate, long enough to see chandeliers dripping through the windows like they were melting. A valet jogged in the driveway. Laughter floated over the lawn like bubbles. I sat in my truck and listened a long minute. Then I put the key back in the ignition and went home to my small house where the floors are honest and the porch light is always on for the right people. I slept like a man who had finally found the beginning of a road he was meant to walk. In the morning, I put on my best shirt and drove to my bank. The manager, young enough to be my son, eyebrows eager to please, offered me a bottle of water and a chair that spun. "What can we do for you today, Mr. Reed?" "I'd like to update the beneficiary information on an account," I said, "and I need to open a new trust." He clicked his pen. "For your daughter's wedding? Congratulations." "For my daughter," I said softly, "I have a blessing. For this account, I have a correction." Oh. When I walked back out into the sun, the papers tucked inside my folder made a sound like a door closing gently. Be not mistaken. That was not revenge rustling. That was stewardship. And still, I left one ribbon uncut. I didn't cancel my suit fitting. I didn't call Emily to tell her I wouldn't come. Love deserves at least the chance to turn its own head around. What would you do if the person you raised told you she didn't need your hand on the most important walk of her life, but a stranger's kindness reminded you what your hands are for? Hold that question. Because the day the Sterlings decided I was decorative at my own child's wedding was the day I learned there's a difference between being needed and being necessary. And necessary men do not waste what they've spent a lifetime earning, least of all their dignity. The email arrived 3 days later with the subject line that tries to be polite while doing the dirty work. Final wedding logistics. Dear guests, it began. To maintain the elegant flow of our curated experience, please note, no open toasts, no spontaneous speeches, no father-daughter dance. Kindly adhere to black tie formal, no hats inside the reception space. Transportation will be provided for VIP family only. At the bottom, in smaller print like a whisper with bad manners, if you have a history of emotional outbursts, please sit near an exit for ease of movement. I stared at that sentence so long the words blurred. I've cried twice in public in 64 years, once at Lily's funeral, once when Emily graduated and mouthed, "We did it, Dad." That was my history. An hour later, a link followed, interactive seating chart. I clicked. The ballroom layout glowed gold on my screen, tables named after islands, Kiawa, Seabrook, Sullivan's. Near the kitchen door, a narrow rectangle labelled Overflow Vendor. My name sat there, like a misprinted ticket. Thomas Reed, Vendor. I closed the laptop carefully, the way you do when something inside you is glass. Then I picked up the phone and called June. "They sat you where?" she exploded. "Andrew's mother is about to meet the business end of my pocketbook." "No," I said. "Put your pocketbook down. Dignity doesn't shout, it decides." "Then decide loud," she snapped, "because I can hear your heart swallowing nails." That afternoon I took the papers back to the bank. The manager remembered my name this time. "Beneficiary update, Mr. Reed?" "2 updates," I said. "Finalize the trust and change the beneficiary on the ledger account." "To your daughter." "To a scholarship," I said. "The Second Chances Fund at the shelter on Rutledge. I want it in my wife's name. The Lillian Reed Scholarship. Single parents returning to school. Art, carpentry, nursing, I don't care. Anything that turns the lights back on." He hesitated just a breath, like he was checking if grief had made me reckless. "Are you sure?" "Son," I said, not unkindly, "I've built staircases that carried less weight than this decision. Draw the papers." And on my way out, I passed the reflection in the bank's glass. Old man, steady shoulders, jaw set like a door you can trust. Imagine realizing the money meant for your child's ease could, in the right hands, become many children's lifelines. Would you do it? That evening, a thick envelope arrived from the Sterling's planner, cream paper with a wax seal that smelled like roses and budget. Inside, a gilt card inviting me to the welcome soiree. At the bottom, in Andrew's tidy handwriting, Tom, could you arrive 2 hours early to help move the cases of wine? Staff is light. Appreciate it, eh? I read it twice, then set it beside Lily's photograph. You seeing this, Lil? I asked the quiet room. They don't want my arm. They want my back. Rosa dropped by with a bag of pastelitos and the kind of look that can fix a man better than food. You ready for the weekend? She asked. As ready as a nail before the hammer, I said. What's the one thing you can do that keeps you you? She asked, crossing her arms. Do that, not 10 things, one. So I went to the shop and made a box. Cherry wood, hand-cut dovetails, lid that clicked home like a promise kept. I lined it with blue silk from the dress Lily had worn the night she told me Emily was on the way. In the lid, I inlaid a tiny brass compass. On the bottom, I branded the shop mark we designed the year Emily could hold a pencil steady, R&D, Reed and daughter. Inside, I placed 2 things, a letter I wrote in ink that would outlive me, and a photograph of me and Emily in muddy boots, her small hand in my big one, both of us laughing so hard the camera caught joy mid-air. I sealed the box and sat with it a long time. This is your real inheritance, I told the heir, and if you don't want it, I know a hallway full of hands that do. The welcome soiree was held at the Palmetto Club under chandeliers that looked like the moon was trying too hard. The valet blinked at my truck. A young woman in a headset spotted me and exhaled like a lifeguard who sees a body float. Mr. Reed, she said quickly, if you could help the bartenders with the crates through the service entrance, please. I smiled the kind of smile my mother warned me about. I'll be using the front door, thank you. Inside, everything gleamed. Andrew's mother, Cecilia Sterling, pearls as big as nickels, air-kissed the room like she owned the lungs in it. When she reached me, she paused, eyes flicking over my suit with scientific precision. Thomas, she said, the way people say termite inspector. So glad you could make it. The planner has your seat. Oh dear, there's been a last-minute shift. But we'll tuck you somewhere cozy. I don't need tucking, I said. A chair will do. The band played something smooth for people who never had to hear a bill sing. I found my place card, plain white, off to the side, next to a ficus and a swinging kitchen door. The server, freckled 19, melting at the temples, bumped my shoulder and whispered, I can swap you if you want. Got a spare seat near the dance floor. I looked at the boy and saw my younger self, working hard, counted out, still polite. You keep your system, I told him gently. Tonight the lesson isn't for me. Halfway through a speech about legacy and taste, Cecilia lifted a glass and said, and to the Reed family for contributing to Emily's impeccable sense of resilience. She learned self-reliance from the best. The crowd clapped the way folks clap at the end of a golf putt, polite, correct, indifferent to weather. Andrew kissed Emily's temple, all photogenic tenderness. Emily's eyes skimmed past me like a stone skimming water, touching but not staying. When the quartet swelled, the planner glided over with a clipboard. Mr. Reed, would you be a dear and help us fold programs near the back? We're short on volunteers. I folded 1,000 paper cranes the year my wife got sick, I said. I'm all folded out. She blinked. Of course. I left early. On the steps, I ran into Pastor Ray. He's a big man with hands like loaves of bread and a voice like Sunday after the storm's passed. Tom, he said softly, you look like someone just tried to sell you your own coat. That's a fair appraisal. You bringing your boots to tomorrow? He asked. It's an old joke. Me in a rented tux with work boots peeking because they're the only shoes that never hurt me. They asked me not to, I said. Said it clashes with the tableau. He lifted an eyebrow. Jesus washed feet other folks pretended not to see. Don't start preaching unless you're ready to finish, I said. But I was smiling. He sobered. You know forgiveness is free, right? But trust is credit you rebuild. I know, I said. I'm not closing the door, I'm just changing the lock. On my way home, I detoured down Rutledge. The shelter's windows glowed warm. Through the glass, I saw Tessa leading kids in chalk drawings on butcher paper spread across the floor. She caught my eye and lifted chalk-streaked fingers in a wave. A small boy presented her with a scribble he announced was "A dragon that eats sadness." She crouched to accept it like it was the Louvre. I pulled to the curb and sat there listening to my engine tick. "Lord," I said to nobody and everybody, "if I am wrong, stop my hand. If I am right, steady it." Morning of the rehearsal, Emily texted, "Dad, could you bring your toolkit? The arbor isn't level." There it was, not my arm, my hammer. "Of course," I replied, because love does what it can while it still can. At the church courtyard, the arbor leaned like a tired man. I adjusted, shimmed, coaxed it into true. When I stepped back, it stood straight as a spine that finally told the truth. Andrew walked by, clapped my shoulder without looking. "Knew we could count on you for the practical things, Tom." "Try me for the beautiful things sometime," I said, but I doubt he heard. During run-through, the planner's assistant announced, "There will be no giving away of the bride. She will process alone." A murmur went through the pews. Some nodded approval. Some looked at me with the sympathy reserved for the obsolete. I kept my face quiet. At the end, Cecilia took Emily aside within earshot. "Darling, remember, chin up, bouquet slightly left, no tears. It ruins the photographs." Emily nodded obediently, then glanced at me. For a breath, something wavered. Then it was gone, like a curtain stirred by a breeze and then still. Outside, June caught my elbow. "Tell me you're going to do something other than swallow this." "I am," I said. "What?" "You'll see tomorrow." "Tom." "June," I squeezed her hand. "This isn't vengeance, it's a reallocation." That night, I ironed my shirt till the pleats could cut. I polished my old black shoes. Boots stayed by the door anyway, just in case the ground asked for honesty. I placed the cherry box in a canvas bag and set it by the keys. Then I opened my letter one last time and read the words that had come out of me like a prayer, with calluses. A father's job is to put tools in his child's hands, some made of wood, some of wisdom. You don't need my arm, you say. You are right, you don't. You need my blessing, you have it. What I can't do is fund a story that writes me out and calls it progress. Your inheritance was meant to be love, grown into opportunity. Since you declined the hand that came with it, I'm placing that opportunity where a hand reached back. If you ever decide you want the other half of what I have, my time, my stories, my Sunday gumbo, my porch when life breaks you a little, your key is under the turtle rock. Love, Dad. I sealed the envelope, slid it under the silk, and closed the lid. Sleep crawled, then took me all at once. I woke to the sound of rain, soft, steady, the kind that cleans a town's face without asking permission. At noon, I pulled up to the church. The Sterling's umbrellas bloomed like a field of navy flowers. Guests floated in, all perfume and polished vowels. I took the back steps, because I know where doors live. In the vestibule, Andrew's mother intercepted me. "Thomas," she said crisply, "a tiny request. Could you refrain from emotional displays? The videographer is on a tight schedule." "Mrs. Sterling," I said, setting the canvas bag gently on a table, "I've done my crying already. Today I'm here to watch what love thinks it looks like." She blinked, missed the point, sailed away. I found Pastor Ray. "Hold this for me," I said, handing him the cherry box. "After the vows, if there's a moment, if there's not, give it to her tomorrow." He weighed it in his hands as if it were alive. "Tom," he said, "there's still time for a miracle that looks like common sense." "Common sense would have fixed the seating chart," I said. "I'm praying for something sturdier." The organ swelled. Guests rose. Emily appeared at the far end of the aisle, a river of white with a spine. She was, simply, beautiful. My throat closed around 1,000 mornings. Pancakes burned, homework corrected, scraped knees kissed, benches built so she could reach the sink. She walked forward alone, chin up, bouquet slightly left. No tears. And I stood near the exit, just like the email suggested, so I could see two things at once: the woman she had become, and the door I was prepared to walk through if the room asked me to shrink 1 inch more. When the vows began, the rain quickened, drumming real weather over curated air. Somewhere in the back, a small child laughed at thunder like it was a joke meant for brave people. "Do you, Andrew?" the pastor asked. "I do," Andrew said, smooth as a checked box. "Do you, Emily?" She hesitated, a single heartbeat, one I felt in my bones, and then, "I do." Pastor Ray looked at me across the crowd, long and steady. Then he closed his book and said, clear as bells, "Before we bless this union, the father of the bride has left something with me." Every head turned. Andrew's mother stiffened, June squeezed air. And I breathed, in, out, ready to let my next choice speak louder than any toast they refused to hear. Pastor Ray's voice carried like a song meant to reach the back pews and broken hearts. "Before we bless this union," he said, holding up the small cherrywood box, "Emily's father left a gift. I believe it deserves its moment." You could hear fabric rustle, heels shift, 100 polite breaths caught midair. Andrew's mother's smile faltered at the edges, like paint hit by rain. Emily turned, slowly, uncertainly, her veil trembling with the air she'd just lost. I stepped forward, not down the aisle like tradition, but along the side, the way workers move through fine spaces, quiet, useful, unseen until they choose not to be. "Pastor," I said softly, "if you'll allow me." He nodded and placed the box in my hands. The cherrywood gleamed under the stained glass light, red like memory, gold like forgiveness, trying to be born. "I was told," I began, "that I wasn't needed today." Murmurs stirred, like wind testing the walls. "That's not a complaint," I continued, steady. "It's a truth that needed saying out loud. My daughter is strong. She built herself tall, with steady footing and sharper eyes than I ever had. And that's the dream every parent starts with, isn't it? That one day they won't need you to hold them up." Emily's eyes filled, Andrew's jaw tightened. "What I didn't expect," I said, voice low, "was to be told that strength meant erasing where you came from. That independence meant silence from love. That elegance required amnesia. Someone, probably June, whispered, 'Lord, have mercy,' loud enough for heaven to mark attendance. I rested the box on the altar rail. Inside, this are two things: a photo of us, back when laughter came easier than judgment, and a letter that says what I'll repeat now. You don't need my arm, Emily, but you will always have my blessing. The money I saved for your wedding and your home, your mother and I built that with our hands, our winters, our small sacrifices. It's not gone. It's been redirected. It's gone to people who are still building their first chance." Gasps rippled through the pews like dropped pearls. Andrew's mother stiffened so suddenly her pearls clicked against each other. "Excuse me," she hissed under her breath. I ignored her. "The Lillian Reed Scholarship Fund opened this morning. It will put single mothers, young artists, and trade students through school. Because that's what your mother would have done. She believed love should circulate, not accumulate." Emily took a small step forward. "Dad, what are you doing?" "What I was always meant to do," I said gently. "Making sure something good comes from my love, even if it's not exactly where I thought it would go." Her voice trembled. "You gave away my inheritance? I gave it purpose." It wasn't anger that filled her eyes. It was confusion, the kind that cracks pride before breaking it. "I don't understand." "You will," I said. "Maybe not today. Maybe when the first letter of thanks arrives from someone who never met me, but walks a little lighter because of you. That'll be your legacy if you want it." The guests whispered. Some nodded, some frowned. I caught Pastor Ray's faint smile. He understood redemption when he saw it. Andrew stepped forward then, hand tightening around Emily's wrist. "Mr. Reed," he said, voice dripping with wounded civility, "this is highly inappropriate. You've hijacked a wedding to stage, some kind of moral performance." I looked at him, the kind of look men save for the moment they decide not to fight someone, but to bury them in silence. "Son," I said quietly, "this isn't a performance. It's a closure. A father's last duty is to leave his child with truth, not applause." "Truth?" he scoffed. "You're embarrassing her." "I've embarrassed no one," I said. "But I can see how the absence of my money might feel that way." A few guests stifled shocked laughter. Even June's hand shot up to her mouth, failing to hide a grin. Pastor Ray stepped in, voice warm and firm. "Let's bless this union, with truth already spoken and love still possible." He closed the service quickly. When the recessional played, Emily didn't move right away. She stood by the altar, hands shaking. I waited because patience is the only inheritance I still owed her. When she finally approached, her eyes were rimmed red, but steady. "Dad," she whispered, "why would you do this today, in front of everyone?" "Because silence becomes consent," I said, "and I can't consent to being erased from your story quietly." "I wasn't erasing you," she said, though the words lacked conviction. "I just didn't want drama. Andrew's family can afford to be offended," I finished. "You, however, can't afford to forget who built the table you're eating at." She looked down, her diamond ring catching the church light bright and cold. "Mom would have been proud of you, wouldn't she?" she said softly. I smiled. She'd have said I could have waited until dessert. That got the smallest, saddest laugh from her. Outside, rain had stopped. The world smelled clean, like it had forgiven something important. Guests filtered toward the reception. Some avoided me like I carried scandal. Others squeezed my shoulder in quiet solidarity. Pastor Ray walked me out to the steps. "You did it with grace," he said, "and that's rarer than gold." "I didn't do it for grace," I said. "I did it to remind her that her father's love doesn't wear tuxedos." He nodded. "Still, grace came anyway." From the courtyard, I could hear the band warming up, the opening notes of a father-daughter dance that wouldn't happen. For a moment, that absence hollowed me. Then I saw Rosa standing by my truck, holding an umbrella, a proud, fierce smile on her face. "You were right," she said as I approached. "Love doesn't retire, it just changes departments." "How'd you get here?" I asked, half laughing. "Drove your old Chevy from the shop. I figured someone should make sure you didn't go home in silence." We stood under the umbrella, watching guests shuffle past. Emily glanced our way once. Her eyes found mine across the wet courtyard. She mouthed something, 2 words. "Thank you." I didn't mouth anything back. Some words need to travel alone, so they can grow up before they come home. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the ledger open to its last page. In the margin I wrote, "Final deposit, purpose complete." Then I closed it, slid it into the bottom drawer, and turned off the light. But peace is never the last chapter in stories like this. The world, especially the polished world of the Sterlings, doesn't take public humility lying down. And 3 days later their retaliation arrived, not in words, but in reputation. They called me ungrateful, erratic, bitter. Andrew's father made sure the whispers reached every client within my old Charleston circle. Work started drying up faster than varnish in July. But see, I've survived worse storms than gossip. And when you've already given away everything that made you heavy, what's left to lose? That was when I decided to teach the Sterlings, and perhaps my daughter, a different kind of lesson. Not with anger, with demonstration. If they thought my hands only built frames, they were about to learn I could build stories too, and sometimes the truth just needs a stage. Charleston's gossip network travels faster than Wi-Fi and with better retention. By the following Tuesday, I couldn't buy a cup of coffee without a sympathetic glance or a cautious step back. The story went something like this. Thomas Reed, retired woodworker, ruined his daughter's wedding with a dramatic stunt, giving her inheritance to charity in front of guests. Funny how generosity becomes scandal when it stops being convenient. At the hardware store, an old friend from the docks shook his head. "Heard about the wedding, Tom? Folks saying you lost your marbles." I smiled. Maybe I just found the right ones. But the rumours found their way into the business district too. A catering order cancelled. A small hotel decided to go in a different direction for their frame restoration. By Friday, even the local supplier I'd worked with for 20 years called to pause the account. I hung up the phone, stared at the wall where Lily's photo hung. Guess we're in the pruning season, sweetheart. That night, Rosa dropped by with her son Matteo. The boy's homework sat between us as we ate soup. He looked up at me with those wide, earnest eyes. "Mr. Tom," he said, "Mama says you gave your money to make school for people like us." Rosa looked embarrassed. "He overheard. Sorry." I smiled at the boy. "Your mama told the truth. We help each other rise, right?" He nodded fiercely. "Then you're like Santa with a toolbox." Rosa laughed so hard she spilled her tea. I didn't laugh, not right away. I just looked at Matteo, skinny arms, smart hands, and thought, that's the future I wanted to build all along. After they left, I opened the shop ledger and checked the scholarship fund's progress. The shelter director, a kind woman named Eliza, had texted earlier. Applications pouring in. Single moms, veterans, even a teenage carpenter. "You started something, Mr. Reed." Started. Not finished. The next morning I decided to finish it properly. By Saturday, I had written and rewritten the same note half a dozen times. Then I walked it straight to the Charleston Chronicle. I didn't need social media. I wanted ink, something that smudged your fingers so you remembered it. The editor, a younger man with glasses too stylish for his pay grade, looked skeptical. "You're sure you want this published as an open letter, Mr. Reed?" "I'm sure," I said. "And don't cut the ending. It's the most honest part." It ran Monday morning under the headline, "A Father's Gift, an Open Letter to My Daughter." The first paragraph was simple. When a father gives away his daughter, it isn't in a church or under lights. It's in the 100 small sacrifices that teach her what love looks like when it sweats. I don't regret that my daughter no longer needed my hand at her wedding. I regret that she mistook my silence for absence. The money I saved was always meant to build something good. It will still do that, just for more than one person now. By noon my phone was burning. Some calls I ignored, others I took. Reporters, former clients, people who'd said nothing to me in years. But one message stood out, a voicemail that began with tears before words. "Dad, it's me." Emily's voice trembled like it had lost its map. "I read your letter. I don't know what to say. I keep thinking about that picture in the box, the one where I'm on your shoulders at Folly Beach. I showed it to Andrew and he said it was manipulative, but I don't think it was. I think it was us." Silence then. "Can I come by tomorrow, please?" I replayed that message twice before deleting it, not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't want to cling to proof. Love should breathe on its own. Tuesday came with rain again. When Emily knocked, she looked different, less polished, more real. The makeup had surrendered. The hair was simple. She wore no jewelry except her ring. "Hey, Daddy," she said. It was the first time she'd used that word in years. "Come in," I said quietly. She stood by the old workbench, tracing the grooves where I'd carved her initials decades ago. "I forgot how this place smells," she said. "Like sawdust and lemon oil." "It's the smell of honest mistakes," I said. She smiled faintly, then turned serious. "They're furious, you know. Andrew's parents. They say you humiliated them." "I didn't humiliate anyone," I said. Truth just doesn't flatter pride." She looked down. "Andrew's been distant since the wedding. His mother says I should have stopped you." "You couldn't have," I said. "Not because I'm stubborn, though I am, but because it wasn't about them. It was about balance, about putting love back where it belongs." She swallowed hard. "I used to think you were small-minded, Dad. Always patching things instead of buying new. Always fixing what should have been replaced. But I think I finally get it. You weren't stingy, you were faithful." That word landed deep. She reached into her purse and pulled out the cherrywood box. "Pastor Ray gave this to me after the ceremony. I opened it last night." "And?" "I cried," she said simply. "And then I looked up the scholarship online. I saw the first recipient. Her name's Tessa Alvarez. You remember her?" Rosa's voice echoed in my head. "Let love move its hands." "I do," I said. "She helped with that art show." She wrote a post about you," Emily said, showing me her phone. It read, "A man I barely know fixed my frame and my life. Because of the Lillian Reed Scholarship, I start college next month. I'll carry his wife's name like a compass." Emily looked up, tears trembling. "You gave my mother's name to someone who'll never forget it. That's more beautiful than anything I did at that wedding." "Maybe beauty's finally catching up," I said. She set the box on the bench and took my hand. "Daddy, I can't undo what I said, but I need to ask, can I still come home sometimes, even if it's just for coffee and stories?" "Home never closed, Em," I said. "You just forgot where the door was." She hugged me then, hard, desperate, like the years between us were collapsing into sawdust and forgiveness. When she pulled back, she wiped her eyes and laughed. "You always said families like wood grain, messy but stronger for the knots. And you finally believed me." She nodded. "I told Andrew I needed space, real space. I think he thought I meant a weekend. I might mean a lifetime." "That's between you and your own mirror," I said. "But if you need help building a new table, I've got lumber." She smiled through tears. "You always do." Weeks passed. The scandal faded, replaced by something quieter. Respect. The Chronicle printed follow-ups about the scholarship, interviews with Rosa and Tessa, even a photo of Emily volunteering at the shelter. The Sterlings withdrew from public events for a while. Pride has a curfew. One afternoon, as I locked up the shop, Emily arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. "For the old man who gave me back my compass," she said. "Don't call me old. Call me recalibrated." We sat on the porch, the same steps where she'd once learned to whistle. "Do you ever regret giving the money away?" she asked. I shook my head. "Regret is for people who think wealth is a ledger. I learned wealth is the echo of what you fix." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I think Mom would have been proud." I looked out at the setting sun, painting the world in forgiveness. "No, honey," I said softly. "She'd have been proud of you for remembering what love looks like after forgetting for a while." The porch light flickered on. Somewhere down the street, laughter from Rosa's house spilled into the evening. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt the house breathe again. Autumn slid over Charleston like a slow hymn. Air cooler, marsh grass turning copper, cicadas humming softer, as if even they respected what was being rebuilt. It had been 3 months since the wedding. The gossip had dried up, replaced by something rarer, quiet admiration. At the hardware store, strangers nodded. At church, people I barely knew pressed my hand and said, "You did right by truth, Mr. Reed." I didn't do it for rightness. I did it for peace. But sometimes the two shake hands. The Lillian Reed Scholarship had already funded 3 students. Rosa showed me their letters every Thursday, like a proud aunt. One of them, a Navy veteran learning furniture restoration, wrote, "Your wife's name will live on every table I build." Thank you for teaching me that beauty and usefulness can share the same nail. That line stayed with me. I started using it in the shop's flyers. Business had doubled. People wanted read honesty in their work again. Maybe scandal just needed time to look like integrity. Emily visited every weekend. At first it was awkward, me offering coffee, her offering too many apologies. But over time we stopped talking about the past like a crime scene and started treating it like a classroom. One Sunday she brought lunch. Real lunch, grilled chicken, slaw, cornbread like Lily used to make. She set the table and said, "I can't remember the last time we ate together without worrying about silverware." "Then this is the first time again," I said. She smiled. "You know, the scholarship got a feature on Channel 5. The reporter asked me if it was true my father gave away my inheritance." "What did you say?" "I said he replanted it." That word hit me deep. "Replanted," I repeated. "Your mother would have liked that." "She would have loved Rosa," Emily added. "She does love Rosa," I said, glancing at Lily's picture on the mantel. "Some people don't need a heartbeat to keep helping." Emily fell quiet, eyes on her coffee. "Andrew and we separated." I waited. He wanted to move to Connecticut. Said Charleston felt too small for his career. I told him small towns are where people remember what they owe. He said that sounded provincial. I said it sounded like home. And what did he say to that? He didn't. She sighed. "I guess sometimes love runs out of oxygen when pride takes the window seat." I nodded. "Then you open the window and breathe on your own. You've got the lungs for it." She smiled through tears. "You're not angry with me anymore, are you?" "I never was angry," I said. "Disappointed for a while, sure. But anger ends things. Love fixes them." She looked around the shop, eyes softening on the half-finished cradle near the bench. "You building that for anyone?" "Just a gift," I said. "Rosa's sister had a baby last week, little girl. Name's Lila." Emily ran her fingers over the smooth wood. "Can I help sand it?" "Course you can." And just like that we worked together again, the sound of sandpaper and forgiveness blending until you couldn't tell one from the other. A few weeks later, the shelter hosted a dinner to celebrate the first round of scholarship recipients. They asked me to speak, but I said no. I'd done enough talking. Emily, however, said yes. The hall was filled with people who smelled like hope and second chances. Rosa sat beside me, Matteo in a clip-on tie, legs swinging under his chair. The air buzzed with laughter and casserole steam. When Emily stepped to the podium, she looked calm. No pearls, no practice smile, just honesty. "My father taught me how to build things," she began. "But I forgot that for a while. I thought love was something you wore like a gown, perfect, pressed and silent. I was wrong. Love is a workshop. It's messy, loud and full of sawdust. It leaves calluses where the lessons stick." I felt Rosa squeeze my hand. Emily went on, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "I stand here tonight because a man I once called stubborn decided to prove that humility can change the world. Dad, you didn't lose me. You reminded me where I started." The crowd rose in applause. Some clapped politely, others stood with tears. But all I could do was nod. Once, slow, because sometimes applause is too loud for gratitude. Afterward, Emily walked up and pressed an envelope into my palm. "Don't get mad. It's not money. It's a pledge form." I opened it. She'd signed on as a recurring donor to the scholarship fund. Her note at the bottom read, "In honor of the man who redefined inheritance." I couldn't speak. I just hugged her and said what my heart had been whispering for months. "Welcome home, baby girl." By winter, Emily was renting a small cottage down the street from me. She came by every Sunday after church, sometimes with muffins, sometimes just her laughter. She started helping Rosa at the shelter too, organizing art nights, mentoring younger girls. Word spread, not about the scandal, but about the woman who'd turned a wedding wound into a community garden. One afternoon, as we sanded a new frame, she said, "You know, I used to think inheritance was money. Now I think it's mercy." "And mercy pays better," I said. She grinned. "You've got that right." Outside, the December sun dipped low. The porch light flickered on. A soft rain began to fall, light, cleansing, familiar. Emily leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Do you ever think about Mom?" "Every day," I said, "but not the way people mean. I think about her like wind through the shop, always there reminding me which way grace blows." "She'd be proud of you," Emily said. "I think she's proud of us," I corrected. We both learned how to rebuild without erasing what broke. The shop clock ticked, the rain hummed on the tin roof, and the air smelled of lemon oil and peace. I thought then of all the fathers and daughters who'd ever had to find their way back to each other, and I wished them one thing, that they'd learn what we finally had, that love's not about being needed, it's about being known. Spring came early that year, soft as an apology. Charleston wore new blooms like it had been forgiven, and I felt lighter every time I opened the shop door. The scholarship fund had grown. Local businesses joined in. Anonymous donations arrived. Even a few old clients sent checks with notes like, "You made us remember what family's supposed to mean." On the first anniversary of the fund, the shelter hosted a small gathering. Nothing fancy, just folding chairs, music from a borrowed speaker, and plates of Rosa's pastelitos. Tessa stood at the microphone, diploma in hand, her voice bright and steady. "Because of this scholarship," she said, "I didn't just go to college, I finished, and I start teaching art at Lincoln Middle next week. Mr. Reed, Mrs. Reed, wherever she is, thank you for believing in people who are still trying to believe in themselves." The room clapped, but I couldn't lift my hands. My heart was clapping enough for both of them. After the ceremony, Emily joined me by the punch table. She looked around the room, eyes soft. "They call you a legend here, you know." "I'm just a carpenter with a checkbook," I said. "Dad," she said, smiling, "legends don't build castles, they build bridges." I nodded toward Rosa and Matteo, laughing across the room. "Funny thing about bridges, they hold best when you let others walk beside you." We drove home in quiet peace, the kind that doesn't need filling. When we reached the porch, the air smelled of honeysuckle and rain. Emily hesitated at the steps. "Dad," she said softly, "I never thanked you properly for the way you handled everything. You could have yelled or punished or disappeared, but you just taught." "Life's too short to waste on loud lessons," I said. "People hear better when you whisper with your actions." She nodded, tears catching the porch light. "You gave me the kind of inheritance no one can take away." "And what's that?" "Faith in the kind of love that doesn't quit." The words hit me harder than any apology ever could. Inside, the clock struck 9. I poured 2 mugs of tea, mine and the one I always poured for Lily out of habit. Emily noticed and smiled. "Still making tea for Mom?" "Always," I said. "She's just late tonight." We sat together in silence, listening to the rain patter on the tin roof. Finally, she said, "I think I want to help run the scholarship full-time. I don't know what comes next, but I want to build something that lasts." "Then you already know what comes next," I said. "You just start. You build. You fail a little, you fix it, you keep going. That's how every good thing in this world stays standing." She nodded and leaned her head on my shoulder. After she left, I stepped outside, letting the rain touch my face. The street was quiet, and for the first time in years, my heart didn't feel like it was waiting for something to come back. It felt like it was finally home. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Lily, we did it." Oh, and if I listened closely, really closely, I could almost hear her laugh in the wind, soft, proud, and free. I turned back toward the warm light spilling from the window, the scent of sawdust and lemon oil filling the air. Love hadn't left me behind after all. It had simply moved forward and waited for me to catch up. If there's a lesson in all this, it's simple. When someone you love tells you they don't need you, don't rush to prove them wrong. Just stay steady, keep building. Keep loving in silence until truth knocks on its own door. Because love that's patient enough to be misunderstood is the kind that outlives everything else. Money, pride, even time. And when it finally circles back to you, it arrives not as an apology, but as understanding. That, my friends, is the real inheritance. If stories like this move you, tap the like button, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next tale.